Another year, another list of horror movies you've never heard of before in your life. And for good reason. This is yet another list of horror movies that push the limits of what we, as viewers, are willing to sit through. So without further ado, this is my top 10 What the Fuck Horror Movies Part 5. The Creeping Terror. In 1964, Vic Savage brought us some classic sci-fi horror, with a shaggy toilet brush from outer space, come to terrorize a small town. Apparently, it eats people in order to gain in size. There are several jokes to be made there. It was apparently one of those no-budget films with the lowest of low effects. It still kind of fits in with the black and white sci-fi movies of yore, though. Lumberjack Man. This 2015 film, directed by Josh Baer, takes place at the Good Friends Church Camp, which boasts fun under the sun. I hate it already. Obviously, this is a parody-style horror movie, so it likely gets some leniency for that, and judging by the looks of the reviews, it falls more in the so bad it's good category. The Wind. I had trouble even finding a trailer for this sucker, you know that? But, according to what I could find on it, it's a 2001 film directed by Michael Mangillo. As the title suggests, there's an ancient killer wind abouts that brings with it the apocalypse, which is interesting because all that sounds like it has fuck all to do with the film. It looks more like one of those movies that's trying to be Heavenly Creatures-esque, but the resounding majority says, no. Camp Blood. This 2000 film, directed by Brad Sykes, is what happens when you've seen Friday the 13th and a few other slasher staples and decide to make your own, with no budget. This very much has the vibe and video quality of a group of friends who drank too much Blue Ribbon and went out into their cousin's plot of land to shoot a movie. And yet, I feel like it could have been far worse. Here's the red nose on top of this clown-shaped cake. Just like Friday the 13th, it's got a shit ton of sequels. Big Top Evil. Bill Moseley, what are you doing? This is a fairly recent film from 2019, directed by Sean Hates. Just going by the trailer, it feels like it was aiming to be somewhere in Rob Zombie territory. Aside from Moseley prominently featured here, we have a group of young adults lined up for slaughter, mentions of an infamous serial killer, and cannibalistic clowns. I mean, what else can I say after that? The Devil Bat. During the era of Universal monster movies, Gene Yarbrough released this film in 1940. Another link to the classic monsters is Bela Lugosi, in a starring role as a doctor who makes giant bats, to get revenge on former employers. How? Well, he uses a special perfume, of course. Oh, and the Devil Bat in question not only looks like a goth's kite, but also sounds like this. Vampire Hookers. Here we have a 1978 film directed by Cirio H. Santiago, starring John Carradine as a pimp, essentially. It's a very simple premise, really. Carradine sends out hookers, who also happen to be vampires, to lure men, mostly sailors it seems, for dinner. This was just an excuse to fulfill the director's niche fetish, wasn't it? There's also a wannabe vampire who farts. A lot. Leave it to the 70s to give us sexy vampires who kept Farrah Fawcett's hair product line going. The last thing that I want you all to know is that the theme song, yes, there is a theme song, includes the line, "Blood is not all they suck." Pet Graveyard. I've heard this 2019 film directed by Rebecca Matthews being described as Pet Sematary meets Flatliners, but less interesting. Essentially, this group of people intentionally game end themselves so they can see past loved ones for a short time before being brought back. But, wouldn't you know it, death ain't too happy about that. Also, there's a ballsack cat with red eyes. Hello, plagiarism! Zoombies 1 and 2, both films having been directed by Glenn Miller and released in 2016 and 2019, have been at the edge of my horror movie radar for years. Ask me why I haven't seen them yet. It's not hard to figure out the general premise. Zombies, but animals whom happen to be zoo animals. Thus, employees are faced with stopping the virus before it gets outside the zoo. And the sequel involves poachers in a jungle teaming up with game rangers, and something about a super zombie virus? Alright, fine. Maybe this could at least give us some cool-looking rotting animals.
Her heart stopped.
Killer Sofa, released in 2019 and directed by Bernardo Rao. This film is about, you guessed it, a bloodthirsty lazy boy. We're back to the bed that eats territory, aren't we? We're going a step beyond your average possessed furniture though, because there's a diebuck inside this thing. So naturally you gotta bring in a rabbi and a voodoo sorceress to handle this. Believe it or not, there's even more to this story, and it all sounds like an overstuffed mess. Also, there may or may not be a scene in which a character fucks the sofa. Next. So those were some more bizarre and bad horror movies that you may or may not have known about. Yet another list put together primarily by you guys. So if there are any more absolutely off-the-wall, scratching your head worthy horror movies that you know of, put them in the comments. See you later.